We finished up 5, I believe. We ended up talking about epigenetics and our thoughts and the renewing of our mind, which is very exciting.
Well, I think we were into 5A, but I'm not sure we finished 5B, did we?
Be a good point. Let's see.
Yeah, I think we were kind of in the process of looking at 5A because we didn't get, there's a secondary part of 5A that's over in the margin on the right, and I don't think we got to that. So.
Yeah, that is correct. We did not talk about the right-hand margin, so be interested to hear that. We got into 5B a little bit, so do you want to begin in the margin there? And
okay. Well, if
you
have any...
It says I cancel my need?
Right.
Okay.
So any questions before we move to that? Any other thoughts from hangover from the other day?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, then I'm just going to do a quick review of the worksheet for anybody who's with us for the first time. Step 1 lays out the circumstance of the situation that resonates some sort of a painful reality, and so we've done step 1. And then step 2 is a declaration of willingness and an understanding that there's going to be some symptoms, there's going to be some energy move. Step 3 taps into what's the goal, what is it that I want here, recognizing that people are, unless they're pretty much just generally miserable people are rarely upset as long as everybody in their lives is fulfilling the goals they hold for them. But when somebody, themselves or someone else, fails to fulfill a goal that they hold, the tendency is for stress to go up and for upset to surface. So step 3, you look back at circumstance in number 1 and as precisely as you can, identify what it was you wanted from that object of attention. Step 4 moves into the place where I call on and I tap into the presence of active love. I bring love forward so that I can step into processing, which in this work we define as the ability to keep love conscious, active, and present when something less than love comes up. And then 5A, kind of a review of the first half of the workshop, the first half of the worksheet. When upset, my perception is built out of corrupt data driven by my goal, number 3. It is a limiting picture constructed from a max of 9 bits of data out of 10,000 brain cells firing. By canceling my goal, my replicate mind's reality collapses and gives me direct contact with the denied and dissociated parts of my carbon-based memory, which projects and blames others for its content. So the action step is, while holding love conscious, active, and present, I now choose to collapse my mind's lies by willingly canceling my goal, the driver from number 1C, or pardon me, number 1C, which is my answer in number 3. What's the goal I had for the object of attention? So I named someone in number 1, and then in number 3, I identified the goal I had for them. So I cancel the goal, and what happens when you cancel the goal is the perceptual construct of the mind that's driven by that goal collapses in on itself. When it collapses in on itself, you might remember a good visual, although it's not a very happy memory for anybody, but a good visual is to remember when we all saw the 9/11 towers go down. Here, these huge buildings at free fall speed simply collapsed into their own footprint. And pained perception does the same thing when you cancel a goal. It collapses into its own footprint. So, and the footprint for pained perception for most people when they're focused on somebody else or themselves in a way of blame, when they're in the religion of blame, the collapse of that perception dropping into its own footprint gives us access to the unconscious, to the hidden part of the mind. Now, doing that one time around a situation that maybe you've been through 87 different times with 42 different people isn't going to finish that particular habit of mind. And so on the right-hand margin of the page, you'll see another canceling to be done, and that is, I cancel my need to be right. One of the things, once we formulate, we get this thing we call premature cognitive commitment. I'm right, and that's the way it is. And you can really sabotage yourself because it takes a lot more energy to change the mind when it's in error than it does to be correct in the first place. And so if I'm in hostility or fear, I don't need to know any more than that to know that my perception is in error. And so I'm going to cancel my need to be right, and I'm going to cancel my need to make up another story out of these brain cells. If I become cognizant of the fact that once I've lived in a particular perceptual mode, let's say somebody who's in victim mode all the time, yes, I'm starting to transmute those victim brain cells. But if I've habitually lived out of them all of my life, if I've watched my power person, maybe parents, siblings, neighbors, people around me live out of it, it's quite a habit and it's easy to fall back into. So it's easy for the mind to go back to those old brain cells that I've just cleaned some of the intensity out of and go back and redo it again. So being conscious of that, I'm going to let go of the need to make up another story out of these brain cells to hallucinate proof that my fear and hostility-based story, my reality is true. If your mind is generating a reality out of hostility or fear, it's using corrupt data, and everything it tells you is a lie. Can you get addicted to the lie? Because in the pretense that the lie is true, see, this is all in the religion of blame. One of the basic tenets, one of the dogmas is, you're the problem in my life. And until I'm thoroughly finished with that, it can be easy for me to repopulate conscious awareness with those blame thoughts and lay it on somebody else. So I'm going to put an end to that. And this is just a way to reinforce putting an end to that. And of course, breathe. And there's a checkbox there to confirm, yeah, I'm going to do that. Does that make sense, Michael, how to use that step?
Yes, and I am thinking that as I get into this process, and I think I heard you say that because of all past history, it's possibly easy for us to want to make up another story.
Right. So I'm going to let go of that habit. I'm going to do a step each time I forgive to change the habit of just making up the stories out of the same brain cells over and over and over again. I might find I was in error in one of my projections with someone, and if I do, and I don't become cognizant of this as a habit of my mind, it could be easy to just simply go back to the same old error. Here I'm putting myself on notice that, this has been a habit of mine. It's how I've lived in my religion of blame, and so I'm going to end my participation in that religion. I'm going to become a convert to living in a mind that builds its realities out of love rather than out of hostility and fear. And that's what we're here to do with this work. We're here to convert every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And that's got nothing to do with religion. We're not interested in bringing people into any kind of religion. What we're interested in is converting people who started out their lives with a love-based mind, probably stepped into a family system where hostility and fear and blame were the religion, and becoming the object of that, they joined that religion instead of the one of love. And so we're looking, and mind then tends to build most of its perceptions in that hostility and fear-based mind out of hostility and fear. So we're looking for a conversion, to convert the mind to one that builds every perceptual construct it develops out of a connection to love, as opposed to out of hostility and fear. We look back in that, in the ancient scriptural teachings, there were many ways where they tried to speak about that. Although, because we're stuck in a Greek construct that love is something we do to each other rather than what we are, we tend to think of love as a doing thing, something I'm going to do to you, or a getting thing, something I'm going to get to you, so you have to do it to me, which is totally false. Can't be done, not possible. It's who we are. And so we're looking to get back to function out of who we are so that our physiology, our cells, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the bowel, the urinary tract, the skin, the brain, the mucous membranes, the sinuses, bones, sinew, teeth, everything functions connected to active present love. We're designed to be fueled by that. That is closer than hands and feet in us. And in a world where the world religion is blame, people talk about a one world religion, it's pretty well taken over. Just listen, go sit and watch the news for an hour. TV show, virtually any movie. There's a one world religion, and it's the religion of blame. And if you're part of that religion, it's okay. It's a place to die. But if you want to live, it's not going to happen there. You have to go back and base your life on who you are as love. And that's what we're looking to do with this worksheet, to delete, to remove the habit mind. There's actually a line in what they call the Lord's Prayer, which isn't a prayer at all, but what they call the Lord's Prayer, there's a line that can be properly translated from the Aramaic that says, "Get me out of my habit mind. Free me from my habit mind." And you do that in a consistent, persistent way by recognizing when you're stuck in it that what you want to do is engage in forgiveness and remove the energetic impetus that moves you toward relying on that as the base of your life.
Michael,
so that's the idea of that step.
That's a wow.
Yeah, it's big stuff.
Wow. Get me out of my habit mind is the translation of one line in that prayer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It can be. That's one potential translation. In the Aramaic, there are many twists. It's a language that doesn't have a lot of words. So, like something like, you'll remember the phrase about not one jot or tittle will be changed. Well, a jot or tittle, they're the smallest characters in the Aramaic alphabet, and it can appear as something as small as a fly speck on a page. And that fly speck changes the meaning of a word. For instance, in the Aramaic Beatitudes, the first Beatitude doesn't say, "Blessed are they who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." In Aramaic, what it says is, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession, you whose home is in the eternal forces of the Creator, the eternal forces of love. Yours will be a heavenly estate. That's what that Beatitude says in Aramaic. And the word home, put the right jot on it, and the word becomes poor. So we know the Aramaic came first. There's several cases where those kinds of translation errors took place. And I mean, you listen to Yeshua and he's saying, I come to connect you with the spirit of truth. You can deny me, but not that. And now people expect us, the Greeks expect us to believe he said, be poor in that which he came to connect us with. Doesn't make any sense. But when you recognize the idea is to have your home in the eternal forces from God, which are based in love, now that makes a lot of sense. Not in a religious sense, but where you live, it just makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that's not a prayer. I know it's a little bit off, but what is your meaning behind that thought?
Well, let's use a parable here. Let's imagine that I am a voice coach and I teach people to sing. And Michael, let's say you call me one day or you drop by the house one day and say, Michael, I want you to teach me to sing. Would I be teaching you to sing if I sang a song? No, That would be ridiculous.
No.
I mean, you might
Demonstrated,
accidentally
but
learn something about singing if I sang you a song, but I wouldn't be teaching you to sing. I'd be teaching you to sing if I said, oh, here, look, here's how you operate your diaphragm. Here's what you do with your breath. Here's how you hold your mouth. Here's some exercise to do. Here's how you hold your tongue. Here's how you hold your teeth. I'm going to teach you to sing. So there's obviously, 2,000 years ago, much as today, much confusion about prayer. Because the disciples say to him, teach us to pray. Now, they're all Jews that they've been, according to their theology, they've been praying from day one in their lives. But they don't know what it means. They're asking, teach us. What we don't know. He didn't say prayer. In fact, if you listen to him, I've actually got a whole video that we did on this. If you listen to him, at one point he says, don't repeat and repeat like the pagans.
right.
Now, what do most people do with this so-called prayer? Every Sunday morning, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, like drones. Repeat and repeat. But he said, don't do that. So what he did was he gave us a set of instructions. Now, what did he instruct on? Prayer. What is prayer? Well, in Aramaic, prayer is not putting your order into the cosmic gift catalog. That's a Greek idea. It is not telling the Creator what the Creator should be doing for you, how the Creator's day should go so that your needs get satisfied. That's not prayer. That's actually petition, which is okay, but it's not prayer. If you call it prayer, then you won't actually do prayer. If I call something a certain thing and I do that certain thing, then I think I've accomplished that. I'm obviously not going to do something different than that. So in Aramaic, the word prayer means to set a trap for God, which in our language and culture goes, well, what is that? I mean, what sense does that make? Well, remember, you're talking to a physicist when you're talking to Yeshua. He thinks in terms of physics and the way the energy system of the world works. And so to set a trap for God, what he knew and what he, to me, was offering was the knowledge that this body-mind unit was specifically created in order to capture the active presence of love and pour it into the world. Now, let's do another parable. I want to watch Channel 2 on my TV. I tuned my TV to Channel 2, but somebody went up on the antenna and they bent the antenna on the roof. They bent the arms and turned the antenna backward. Am I going to capture the signal from Channel 2 and have a nice, clear, crisp picture and sound? No. Not until I rebend the arms of the antenna properly and orient it properly. The shape of an antenna determines the frequencies it receives. So when I align the antenna properly and reorient it, the TV doesn't get more energy flowing through it by going, oh, struggle, I'm going to get more energy here. The TV has more energy flow through it by aligning everything. So the TV is the trap for the signal from Channel 2. When it's properly aligned and oriented, bingo, you have beautiful, clear picture and sound. To set a trap for God in Aramaic means you orient and align yourself to become the space where you capture active present love and bring it into the world. That's what the human form was designed for. That's what prayer means. Nothing to do with rote memory, nothing to do with saying a special set of words every Sunday. It's a set of instructions.
Michael, that is so beautiful. We are here to capture the active presence of love and pour it into the world.
And pour it out into the world, exactly.
Pour it out into the world.
Now, the Greeks say many things. Go back and you read the scriptures. There's so many times it talks about, if you have not love for your brother, if I have not love, I'm like a tinkling cymbal. I mean, there's so many places, but Where does it get clear that we're supposed to be oriented in the line to capture the energy in which we live, move, and have our being, and reflect it and pour it out into the world? Well, how do you get that out of the Greek? If Yeshua heard people saying the Lord's Prayer, he'd say, that's all Greek to me. No, don't repeat and repeat. Understand the instruction set. Here's how you do it. And there is a video. Actually, I think it's on the homepage. Jeannie, is it on the homepage? The video of living, not saying the Lord's Prayer? If not, it's on our YouTube channel. And I go through that whole thing, and line by line we break it down, and then we actually do my pronunciation. I won't claim is very good, but we do the Aramaic instruction set as part of that video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back to that mentioned the earlier one. Get me out of my habit mind. I mean, that is in 7 words that sums up the whole work.
Yes.
Of what I'm understanding here. Get me out of my habit mind. That's just wow.
The habit of the generations. You know, I mean, you can take so many references. Look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a habit, the habit of theirs upon the earth, just playing it out. You know, look at people stuck in the desert. What had to happen? The old generation had to die off, had to get out of the habit mind. Yeah, it is. It is the whole work. And then, of course, the how to do it, which is what this worksheet is what we've decoded after 40 years of work to go, oh, here's how it's done. And the Aramaic Lord's Prayer is just an instruction set for moving in that direction. How to literally orient yourself and physiologically align yourself so that you function as an antenna that captures, just like the TV antenna captures channel 2, and because you're in full perfect alignment, it comes into full expression through you and is poured out into the world.
That is just absolutely beautiful.
And the breath is one of the key parts of it. Hey, honored and delighted. I say, and the breath is part of the ability to do that. It's one of the keys, is keeping the breath moving. And you notice how often when the habits of mind that are based in hostility or fear are accessed by something in the world resonating, how often people shut their breath down and stop that. And then, as a result, they get to live in their projections rather than live as the presence of love, as their created essence.
Yes, I know in my life, it's only been about 5, maybe a few more years, but around that time that I even realized about the breath and how many people are mouth breathers, and that all goes into the whole concept of breathing correctly. And again, just something not many of us are taught.
Yeah. Well, and mouth breathing, you know, as with a lot of things that are true, mouth breathing has a bad reputation in the culture. Oh, he's a mouth breather. But actually, the key healing breath is done through the mouth. That's what still point is. The still point breath is done through the mouth, not through the nose.
Do I pick myself off the floor now, or? Michael, I just thought I understood it in the last few years, a thing or two about breath. Okay, well, that's another subject, but that's a new one for me. I was of the understanding that the mouth breathing was the cause of many mouth. Let me put it to me. My mouth, you know, the deforming of the bone structure and all of that. So maybe 2 different things. I'm not sure of what part of mouth breathing you might be referring.
Yeah, we're not suggesting that anyone in their day-to-day lives become mouth breathers. That's not the idea. But when you go into the still point process, you know, when you breathe nasally, you oxygenate your pathways up into the brain that keep the brain firing and going. And you've heard me say many times over the time you've been working with us, that in order to truly heal, you've got to be out of your mind.
Yes.
When you breathe through your nose, you keep the mind activated. One of the things that you want to have happen when you go into the still point process is get out of the mind of man, shut that thing up for a little while. And so breathing in the still point process, breathing through the mouth is one of the keys.
Wow. Great. Thank you again for sharing that. We'll have to get into that in the future.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so step 5.
Yes.
So again, that's a review. Step 5 is a review, and the action step in step 5 is, I now choose to collapse my mind's lies by willingly canceling my goal, the driver for number 1C, goal I had, which I identified in number 3. I put it in that block, or in that blank space, and I cancel it. And then recognizing, bouncing off of the Harvard research we talked about previously that showed that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells were firing, the max amount of data that went into conscious awareness was 9 bits. Very, very tiny fragment of what's going on within the mind, and even tinier fragment of what's going on within the actuality. It's been estimated in that time frame, which is about a 25th of a second, where 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity are happening in the brain, and conscious awareness only has space for a maximum of 9 bits of that data. We metaphorically call that the 9-bit mind. And it's been estimated in that time frame, there could be as much as 20 trillion bits of data in the actuality. Where are we in the chain of perception? You can bet that a gnat doesn't look out into the world and, in your kitchen sitting on the edge of your compost bucket, which we had this morning, we had some gnats. You can bet that gnat doesn't sit on the edge of the compost bucket and look around them and go, oh, there's the chain for the light on the fan up there. Oh, there's the chain for the fan. Oh, yeah, and there's the heat dial on the oven. Oh, and there's the stove top. Oh, there's the sink. Oh, there's the water spigot for the water purifier. I wonder if that's what kind of water that is. Just, is it RO? Is it, oh, and there's the kitchen table, and the table's set with. You can bet the gnat doesn't do that. Doesn't have that capacity. You can bet the compound fly with its eyes pointing in 1,000 different directions doesn't have that reality. You can bet the dog doesn't have that reality. Where do we sit on that chain of development in terms of looking at the actuality and producing something that is in alignment with what the Creator holds for it? According to the ancient teachings, they said the mind of man has not yet conceived of what lies in store. But my offering is we're in the chain of the Creator's development of instruments to become more perfect expressions of what the Creator had in mind from the beginning for us. And since we've only got 9 bits possible, we want to get to the point where the 9 bits that we use are continuously based in love and not stuck in the habits of the past. So it's about processing out that old data. Now, if we're in a 20 trillion bit world with 10,000 brain cells firing and 9 bits showing up, and I metaphorically call that 9 bits the 9-bit mind, how long do you suppose it's going to take us to clean up 1,000 generations when 30 generations is 1.6 billion people, let alone just our own lives and dramas and traumas and conflicts we've had and the fights and the separations and divorces and the not speaking to, what chance do you suppose we have of cleaning all that up with a 9-bit mind? Good luck. But what Yeshua taught us was that inside of us was, in the context of that conversation about a 9-bit mind, what we might call a super processor. Ruka Dekudsha, definitions down at the bottom of the page. Defined in Aramaic as she, a feminine elemental force that by definition, when invited into activity, undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. So at our creation, we were given a power that resided within us that if we chose to connect with it and were in willingness to be guided by it, we'd be taught everything we needed to know, and everything that we'd been handed to in our genes that was of a disintegrative nature would be healed, would be lifted off of us. And so the first step is to set the stage. The truth is, I don't have a clue how to forgive. I don't know how to reach into this cell and take that neuropeptide out and throw away its garbage. I don't have a clue how to do that. But there's a power in me that does. I have a part to play in that happening. And from step 1 to step 5A is my part. Now, as the television commercial says, the real thing. And the real thing is I ask that elemental force in me. The Greeks translated Ruka Dekudsha as the Holy Spirit. There's nothing about a disembodied spirit being. It's a feminine elemental force that when invited into activity undoes the effects of our errors, teaches us the truth. Monumental. So step 5B is where you invite that power to go to work. So I invite, and you see we've got brackets there with the full Ruka Dekudsha as defined below, if you ever miss on the definition. I usually just fill in the blank because, that power has been given many names. It's been the superconscious, the subconscious, the primordial X, the higher power in the AA programs. So we leave it blank for whatever term fits. I usually just short form it to Ruka. I invite Ruka, and then there's several things I'm going to ask that power to do. 1, to incline me toward healing. How do I touch the mainspring of the inclination of the massive data that's in me, touch the mainspring of the inclination to any given behavior or attitude in my mind? For most people, it's such a mass of information. It's just rolling along like a train, and they want to go somewhere, but the train's going to another station. Oh, yes, I want to be absolutely loving, caring, nurturing, and be that space of love for everybody that I contact. Until something triggers my mind into a different idea, an old habit, and then it's like, to hell with that, I'm going for the throat. So we're asking that power to incline me toward healing, to restore me to, and you'll see the hand points over to Rachma. Remember, in the Aramaic, Yeshua never said love your neighbor, love God. The word was have Rachma for the Creator, have Rachma for neighbor, and for self. And that this was what the law and the prophets hung on. And Rachma, there's just a short definition there, a filter or gateway over the frontal lobes that opens a space of love. So when Rachma is active, I'm asking to be restored to my newborn essence. When that filter opens, that's the gateway that love enters the human form. If that gateway is closed, only one filter can be active in the mind at a time. If it's closed by hostility or fear, love is not present within this system. A system that is not fueled by love is a system that's in a disease process. So I'm asking for the inclination to be, whatever's going on, touch the mainspring of the inclination so that I'm inclined toward healing. Restore me to the truth of who I was created to be, my newborn essence, love. Heal my denial. Heal the religion of blame in me. Virtually every person on the planet is pledged to this religion. And my capacity to generate my emotion identified in number 1B. So here you go up to whatever your answer was in number 1B. and you bring that answer down to this blank, and you ask to be healed of even the very capacity to generate such an energy within yourself. And then another request, help me to open a direct conscious relationship with and gently remove the denied, dissociated, and projected parts of my carbon-based memory. That's a mouthful. Take some time to build the brain cells for. But when you recognize that the Creator put in you a power that had the capability to do all of that in an instant, it seems to be wisdom to say, yeah, take over. I'm here for it. Please invite it into activity, which means you develop a relationship with that power within yourself. Make sense?
Yes, and when we're inviting Ruka Dikucha, I'm somewhat familiar with that term from church days, which is
right.
The many names that you mentioned, Holy Spirit and the many others you mentioned, correct?
Right.
Okay. What I am a little stuck on is the Rachma. Is there and I understand where you're saying it's a filter gateway over the frontal lobes. It's kind of like a block. Is the Rachma, is there a common English translation there that I might be? There's
no such concept in the English language.
And that's why I've never heard of it.
If you go to the Greeks, the best translation they've got is what does that say when they say, yes, what's most important in the law? Oh, love God, love neighbor as yourself. Total, complete mistranslation, but that's the closest they've got, is love. Mm-hmm. And that's like saying, Rachma is the gateway. So that would be like saying, well, I want the car in the driveway and the gate's closed. So bring the car in and forget the gateway. Well, I got a gate that no car can penetrate. So if I don't know how to open the gate, I'm never going to get the car in the driveway where I want it. If I don't even know there's a gate, if there's this, filter, this gateway, Rachma, how can I open it? And especially when we live in a culture that specializes in making sure that that gate is closed as quickly as possible by instilling hostility and fear, even in church. How many sermons have you heard with somebody raging and preaching? I remember one day we were at a church here in Bristol, and we're sitting in front of it's a Baptist church, and there's a preacher up there preaching. And there's just a little kid that's maybe, a boy that's maybe 12 or 13, and this preacher's just raging up a storm. I mean, he's just rocking it about sinners and hell and this whole thing. And I can just see this little kid, this little boy, and he was sitting in that pew in terror. I mean, at least that was my projection of what was going on for him. And I could just about hear him sitting in front of his raging father. And he's sitting in church, being terrorized by preachers telling him he's going to hell, and he's a sinner. Rather than telling the truth of who he is and how to remove those energetic patterns of the generations and the violence that have been done to him. But this kid was just sitting there terrorized. Again, might have been total projection for me. I don't think so. I think I was fairly accurately perceiving him. He just was, he's sitting there listening to it, and it was horrific. So
I understand that.
When you hear this instruction from Yeshua, what's most important in the law? They translate the word love. What the heck does that mean? Well, it depends what circle you're in. It's sexual athletics, it's self-sacrifice, it's put your head on the chopping block so somebody can take it off and then you can say how loving you were. And there's no such concept in English. It's the gate. Now I can see how they translated it to love, because it's a gateway that lets love into the form. But that's like saying, put the car in the driveway and there's a gate that the car can't penetrate, and we don't have the key. How do we open the gate? There's no name for the gate. Nobody even knows there's a gate there. We just know whatever that thing is, or we can't get the car through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeshua, here is the single most important idea in everything that I'm teaching, and there is nothing that resembles that concept in the English, in the Greek, or the Latin language.
Never heard that before, but I'm understanding what you're saying. I'm just, wow, it's all the years I've kind of looked into this and looked into the Greek, looked into the Hebrew, and that has never surfaced. So understanding a bit more why. So back to the worksheet here. So is it, am I correct in understanding it's Ruka de Kudsha that we ask
Correct.
to remove this filter or gateway?
This is the helper.
Is that correct?
This is the one. This is the power that when we don't know what to do or how to do it, could be defined as the super processor that does. That's Ruka. And now that we're aware that there's this opening in us that is, for most people, has been closed, that we can open that. Well, gee, I don't know how to open it. Well, there's a power in you that does, so ask it. And as people will practice with that and let themselves get quiet, I mean, I've had people who, when they get in a quiet space, in a meditative space, and work with this, they actually feel a physiological shift in their brain when they do it.
Absolutely amazing.
So now the gateway is open.
Mm-hmm.
The human-created life, based in love, is now able to enter the human form. Now we become human. Before that, we just had a human form. And of course, every human form has its history, its genes. And most people, when they pick up the book, look at the book, and when the book resonates in them, they read into the book, having no clue of the original meaning of the words. They project whatever the content of their minds is. If one had a brutal, alcoholic, abusive father, those people are going to love to talk about that Old Testament God that's going to rip your head off and send you to hell for eternity. People, those people just love to talk about that one.
Mm-hmm.
If the earthly father had some idea of Rahma, had some idea of living as love, then this person is going to be attracted to the man who talks about it is our Father whose good pleasure it is to give you, to bring you into, to enter the community of love, which is what the Aramaic words, the kingdom of heaven, mean. So some people are going to be attracted to one of those gods, one of those fathers, and some are going to be attracted to the other. Depends on the brain cells we have. When you start to clean up, I think I shared with you the last session we did about this preacher who'd been a preacher for decades, and he wanted to use a page from the Kabbalah, wanted permission to use that as the cover of his book.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd spend a year, couldn't even open the Bible. I mean, he was a preacher, decades, favorite thing, Bible study, and he couldn't even open or look at the book for a period of a year. And then when he opened, he couldn't see anything but love. He couldn't see anything. All the old drama and trauma and hellfire and brimstone was gone. It's like, my God, this is all about living as a human being, living as love. So what brain cells do we have? What needs to be moved out? And I think there are experiences that people have, like this fellow had his breakdown. And it looked like a psychiatric disorder to the world, but he was in a healing process. I remember a woman back about, this goes back into the early days of developing this work, probably 40 years or more ago. And her psychiatrist actually referred her to me because he had a recognition of what a spiritual crisis was. And this woman had been separated from her family, had divorced her husband, had lost her job, could not work anymore, and was at a rope's end, and they were going to put her in an institution, like, lifetime incarceration in an institution because of her psychiatric disorders. And what we did is we stepped in and we did the worksheet process. And when and I don't remember even what the goal was about now, but I remember the upshot of it, the result when she canceled the goal, was she found herself as a small child standing with her father in front of a psychiatric institution where they had just locked her mother up and she never saw her alive again.
My.
And that's where she was heading. That's where she was going. Within a month of that worksheet, she was back to work, back in relationship with her husband and her family. And they were literally, if the psychiatrist hadn't known me and referred her to me, she'd probably, just gone into the institution and died there.
My.
So there's a power in us that knows how to handle absolutely anything and everything and will teach us absolutely everything we need to know. That's what Yeshua came to connect us to. Men, that's not so good. No, you have to follow me. I am the one that will show you the way. No. You go back, Yeshua says, you can deny me, but don't deny the one I came to connect you with. That's what he came to do, connect us with that, not with him. And so asking that power to go to work, and this is the best series of things that I've been able to come up with yet that we could all use help with. Climbing toward healing to my newborn essence love. Heal my denial. Heal my capacity to generate this emotion that shuts down Rockman and takes me into some form of hostility or fear. Help me to come into a direct conscious relationship with and remove those parts of my mind that I've denied and dissociated from and projected them into my brain's image of everybody else. That's pretty much been a step that's been identical for, I'm not even sure now, over a decade. I haven't found anything important to put into that request of Ruka besides that.
And that's only possible when Ruka de Crucia helps us remove the filter and gateway and opens up the pathway for healing.
Yeah, when you start looking at, there are 1,000 generations. Read a few history books and the insanity that's gone on and how all of our bloodlines are connected to, what kind of craziness has been done by kings and slavers and warlords and war chiefs and, military insanity. What kind of crazy has been done besides the alcoholic parent, the raging, preacher, the pained neighbor? How do we ever process that kind of energy when it's in our genes, our very genes? Well, fortunately, there's a power that knows how to do it. And there's nothing that can't be moved. Every expression is a result of a held energy. Every held energy can be removed if we're willing. And, the skill we're inviting people to step into with this worksheet is the ability to willingly collapse pained perception, access the underlying dynamics, and remove them from the mind, which means remove them from physiology, carbon-based memory, to get us out of the mind of man and put us into the mind of the Creator. In other words, release from Satan. Look at that passage at the Garden of Gethsemane where Yeshua directly relates. And this is like real life where we live. He calls Peter Satan. He says, get thee behind me, Satan, and then he defines. He says, for you think in the mind of man rather than the plan of God. We have been so ensconced in the mind of man, in the hostility and the rage and the fear and the pain and the blame and all of that. Release from it on our own is, I would say, improbable and highly unlikely, if not impossible. I don't know if it's impossible. It might not be. When we recognize that there's a helper in us that's willing to be our partner in it, and we turn to that and trust it, changes everything. In an instant, it all turns around. And we're down to the last few seconds.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Michael.
Honored, good sir. You going to be available for tomorrow?
I will.